So in fact, in a book that we've just brought out, it's called The Handbook on Population and Development in India, published by Oxford University Press. The main message of that book is take care of people and population will take care of itself. And when I say take care of people, it means invest in people's health, invest in people's education, invest in their economic opportunities, expanding economic opportunities for people. And you will find that all these problems of fertility rates, maternal mortality rates, infant mortality rates will all come down. And these are the very investments, better health, better education, better nutrition, that you need to accelerate economic growth. In fact, the traditional way is to see that when countries become richer, people will have more income with which to buy more food and buy more housing and better education and so on and so forth. But there's also a very strong connection the other way, that unless people's health conditions improve and education improves, you're not going to be able to improve productivity and growth. So when they talk about population, they forget that India's greatest strength is the fact that 40% of the population is below the age of 18. This is the real potential of this country. So you have to invest in these issues, in these things that the MDGs refer to, whether it's child survival, whether it's women's empowerment, gender equality, education, maternal health. These are fundamental. So in a sense, this dialogue that I have in the Indian School of Business asks this question, oh, is population really a problem? But having said that, if you lower your fertility rates, it doesn't mean that problems of poverty will disappear. In Bangladesh, I refer to Bangladesh, historical example of a country that has reduced fertility rates. In the mid-70s, the fertility rate was 7, which means on average, a Bangladeshi woman would have 7 children over the course of her reproductive life. Today it is down to 2.1 or 2.2. Remarkable transformation in terms of reduction in fertility and achieving the MDGs. But have problems of poverty disappeared in Bangladesh? Certainly not. Because while these indicators, the human development indicators that you talk about, are critical, reducing them alone will not solve the larger questions of progress and security and well-being that I started off with. That the emphasis on human development indicators is crucial, emphasis on MDG indicators is essential, but simultaneously, you have to look at the bigger picture of where is society going. Are people feeling safer in the society? Are people feeling more secure about their jobs? Are people feeling secure about their health? Is there some comfort that yes, as you grow older, there'll be some health system that takes care of you? The dialogue in India is open now on universal health coverage. The one country we are trying not to emulate is the United States of America when it comes to healthcare, because being the richest country, until the new health reforms, which have been very difficult for President Obama to introduce, 40 million Americans didn't have any health insurance. It's one of the most expensive systems of healthcare. That country is spending almost 15%, 16% of GDP on health. So is that the way to go? So the dialogue in India today is we are arguing that, India spends 5% of GDP on health, which is what China spends, which is what Thailand spends, many countries spend. But what is striking about the patterns of health expenditure in India is 1% of GDP is spent by the government, public spending, and 4% is private out of pocket. And so this proportion, 20% government spending and 80% private out of pocket spending, is unusual. In most developed countries, and if you go to Europe or anywhere, it's almost the other way around. 80% of health spending is covered by the state and 20% is out of pocket. So if you trace back why is India doing so poorly, or why are these MDGs on health so fundamental, I would say because the government of India, like in basic education, I was arguing, they put the resource question, public spending is one of the lowest in the world. I was part of the Lancet. It's a medical journal that comes out of London, very well-known journal, and they brought out a special issue on India. And I was one of the 4 Indian team that did the editing, along with Richard Horton and others in Lancet London. We brought this issue out. It was released earlier this month. We're arguing that a lot of the problems are because the public spending on health is so low. Government of India has committed to increasing public spending from 1% to 3% of GDP. They made the commitment in 2005. We have hardly gone to 1.2% of GDP. So how do you push governments to give greater priority and attention to these kinds of issues? Because we're also arguing that it's not just, yes, you have to reverse this so that the private out-of-pocket expenditures go down. Because today, if you look at the health sector in India, many people will tell you, if you go to a primary healthcare center of the government, it's not well equipped, the staff is missing, and so on and so forth. But what is the option in many of the rural tribal areas of India? You go to the private sector and you pay some money, not a lot I believe, but still it's 80% is private out of pocket, but you have people who are completely untrained. So you have a lot of crookery over there, crookery even in the organized private sector, where people don't know what you're being tested for. There is irrational drug prescription going on, there is unnecessary tests going on, there is money being paid for referrals, so you get kickbacks on referrals, and so on and so forth. And there is very poor legislation to regulate the private sector. So we're really caught in this. And so when I asked the question, so we're saying that yes, you put in more money, but simultaneously you need better systems of accountability and governance. So it's opened up an interesting debate, not only in India but across the world, on what is the role of the state. It is an old question. There's a big push for market reforms and going more to the private sector. But today you find a swing back again to arguing that many of these things that we're talking about, whether it is safety, whether it is health, whether it's basic education, whether it is safe drinking water, whether it is sanitation facilities, all these have to be principal responsibilities of the state. And for that you need a state that is strong, a state that is well resourced, because without resources you're not going to achieve anything. We are today arguing that when it comes to primary health care, it must be fully provided for by the state. Now you can't turn around and say, hey, but the state is performing so badly, so why should we invest in the state? The answer is, how do you make the state more accountable and improve the performance of state institutions? Not abandon state institutions, because when it comes to health, you cannot trust anybody. You cannot trust the private sector because of the asymmetry in information. The patient doesn't know what is wrong with him, the doctor has all the information. So there's a lot of scope for getting cheated, for getting denied proper treatment and so on. So the state has to step in these kinds of places, and we are arguing you must invest in the state. Why are people not accessing healthcare? Because the facilities are not there. In 2005, India launched something called the National Rural Health Mission. And I was part of the team that developed the idea, but I'm also on the mission steering group of the Government of India that oversees the implementation of this program. And here again you find very interestingly, in the last 5 years, a great increase in utilization of public health facilities. When you invest in public health institutions, the faith of the people goes up. In fact, the faith of people in government health system is so strong. Even today, you may find it funny, but I have friends in the All India Institute of Medical Sciences here, which is a very good government hospital. I call up my friend and say, hey, listen, this is the symptom, what is the treatment? Once I get the diagnosis and the treatment from the All India Institute friend, then I go to the private doctor. You cannot first go to the private doctor and ask, because they will send you off on 500 tests and keep you there for a good 10 days to get enough out of you so that the business model is successful. So we are always doing this. Check with the government facilities first, get the diagnosis right, and then get your treatment in the private sector. So the faith of people in government is phenomenally high. And I think the government has to recognize that faith will be reinforced, needs to be reinforced, strengthened, but only if they are accountable. And that takes us to the root problem. The second problem, if you ask anybody, is corruption. And that today, across the world, you cannot talk of development unless you talk about corruption. And to me, I also teach at the Kennedy School at Harvard. I've been teaching there for 25 years, every year for 6 weeks, a course on economics and public policy. And you have people from different countries. And I often ask the question, yes, corruption is important. But do you think corruption really accounts for differential performances across countries? So if you take a table and you say, okay, here's China, here is India, here is Nicaragua, here is this. Why are the levels of, let's say, life expectancy or opportunities for schooling or maternal mortality rates so different? Can corruption explain the differentials across these nations? Take Indian states. The southern states, Tamil Nadu, for example, is doing better than some of the other states. And I ask these questions always, can we explain away differences in outcomes, human development outcomes, only because of corruption? So the answer is certainly no. But having said that, it's equally important for us to say that public resources are very scarce in any country, and particularly in a developing country like India. These public resources must be used efficiently, must yield effective outcomes, must be invested in sustainable initiatives. So how do you ensure that? And why is that not happening?